Hello there, YouTube. I thought I'd make a quick video to get back into the swing of things. I've not been able to upload for a little over a week for a mixture of personal issues, migraines, and just not being too well. And the couple of videos I did record last week, I recorded when the AC was on, because I was stupid. So the audio was unsalvageable, so they ended up getting deleted. That was a pity. Still, I'm back now, I'm in front of the camera, and I want to record a few videos. Now, just to get back into the swing of things, I'm going to record something a bit light-hearted, just a bit of a pet peeve, that I thought I'd share with you guys. I've got a couple of other videos that I'm in the middle of setting up, and I'm going to record those and upload those over the next few days. But for the time being, I just want to go over one thing, and that is, TV forensics is bullshit. Yeah, I know you already all know that. But for me, it started to become a big problem when I'm watching shows. I like procedural cop shows. I actually quite enjoy them. I like procedural dramas anyway. Things like House MD. I enjoyed the medical drama, like Case of the Week kind of thing. But the police procedurals, things like CSI and Bones, I also enjoy those. Now, I've watched a bit of each. I've not watched them all the way through. I watched the first few seasons of CSI, like the original one set in Vegas, not any of the others like New York, or the one with the glasses. I know that one's the one that's popular for memes and all that, but the original CSI I always felt was the better show. I've only ever seen a few episodes of the others, and they just didn't seem to grab me. But that was bad for so many things. But the other show that I watched a lot of was Bones. I really like Bones. It's one of my favourite shows. But it is really starting to grate for me at the moment. And it's not because the storyline isn't good or the characters aren't interesting. They genuinely are. What's bothering me is that I'm starting to see the patterns so glaringly obvious now that I can't ignore them. And it's that TV forensics is bullshit. Now, for those of you who don't know, while I'm a disabled man at the moment, I'm not currently working, I have studied forensics. I went to university to study chemistry. In fact, I went to the University of Wales, Bangor, and I studied chemistry. Then I went to the University of Central Lancashire and studied forensic biology. So I am a forensic biochemist. I don't work in that job. I've never actually worked in that job because that job is impossible to get. Actually working in a forensics lab requires you to be one of the best in the country. There's not many forensics labs, so it doesn't matter how qualified you are, unless you're doctorate level qualified, you're probably not getting a job in it. And because of shows like CSI and the like, forensics became one of those oversubscribed courses that was popular because it was trendy. And I happened to be in a situation where around me there were more people graduating in a year than there were jobs in a decade. So I've never actually been able to work in that profession. But I did study it. And what I can tell you is that forensics does not work even close to how it is on TV. First of all, the CSIs do everything in these shows. In CSI, everyone who's like a CSI, they've got CSI grade 3, grade 4, etc. Doesn't matter what grade they are. As far as I know, no CSI system actually has a grading system, which gives you more responsibilities and ability to go into different fields and do different things. As far as I know, it doesn't happen. Now, this is in America, so it might be different, but I don't imagine it's that different. Same with Bones. At least they have you working with a person from the FBI in that one. Right, they'll have Bones working with Booth. So she's got your CSI-esque expert, and you've got the police expert working together. That can kind of mitigate this problem. But and even then, technically speaking, they have CSI, so they're in the background, they're extras. So it'll be Booth and Brennan working together. She's an expert in Bones. He's the lead FBI officer, and then there'll be CSI in the background collecting stuff, and she'll just be examining the bones. That's more realistic, but it's still not very realistic. Now, to give you an idea, CSIs do absolutely everything in these shows. They go to the crime scene, they collect all the evidence, they examine all the evidence, they question all the witnesses, they put together the case, they go to court to argue the evidence. They do literally everything and anything that you could imagine. They are solely responsible for the entire case. This is not even close to how it is in real life. In real life, a forensics lab will be sent some sealed evidence, and you will, as an analyst, you will open that evidence. As you open it, you will mark down that you opened it, because you'll have to cut the seals on it. So you'll write down that you did that, and then you will examine the evidence. You won't know where it's from, what's happened. You might get, say, blood-stained clothing. You don't know whose blood it is, whether it's the victims, whether it's the killers, whether or not it was a murder, whether or not it was a rape, whether or not it was breaking and entering. You have no idea what you're examining. So you just examine everything. You say what it's made of, what's staining it, you check for everything. You check what kind of blood it is, you check for petrochemicals, you check for semen, you check for anything that might be on that evidence. And then you write up a report. And then you put it back in another sealed container, you seal it with sealed tapes, and you sign across the tapes with your signature to say you sealed it. So if anyone breaks that seal, they've now broken your signature. They are now responsible for it. That's how the transport of evidence works. If you're a crime scene investigator and you are there to collect the evidence, the amount of times I've seen them go into a crime scene and they'll get like a pen out their top pocket and lift up a bullet casing and look at it. It's like, no, you've now contaminated the evidence. First thing you do is you go in head to toe in like white suits where just your face is visible. Wearing these big booty things over your shoes. Gloves, everything's covered, everything is like completely covered, and you go in with a clipboard and you just mark down all the things you can see. You then have a criminal photographer go in and photograph the scene from every conceivable angle with little markers on every piece of potential evidence, photographing everything so you can see where it is. Then you go in and you start taking samples. And everything is off the ground or off whatever it is, straight into a bag. From there, you will then dust everything for fingerprints, which, by the way, fingerprints, they are not anything like what you see in these shows. It's not this, oh, you dust it, you get a perfect fingerprint, and then you put it into a computer and it scans everyone's fingerprints. No, what you do is you get a fingerprint and it's usually smudged, and it's kind of difficult to check. And you put it onto, take that tape, you put it onto a slide of some kind, you put it under a microscope, and all you do is you get a sample of the fingerprints, this sample that you've taken, and you see if you can match a couple of things. And if you can match around 6 points of commonality, that's enough for it to be considered a matched fingerprint. Which, by the way, is not unique. You can match 6 points of commonality to about 10,000 people in most fingerprints. So, fingerprint evidence, not good enough. Not even close to good enough. You can have two different people you can have a Chinese person and a West African person, and you could take their fingerprints and you could then have a third fingerprint and all three of them could have 6 points of commonality. That is possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible. So fingerprints are not good enough as true evidence, but that's true of almost all forensic evidence. Hairs. If you get a hair or a fibre, when they say they've matched it, all this is a visual match. All this means is you've taken the hair or taken the fibre, you put it under a microscope, you've zoomed right in, you've looked at the two, and you make a judgment call, do they look the same? If they do, that's a visual match. And all it is your interpretation. There is no real science involved in that. It is just, do they look the same under magnification? And there are a lot of times when that's wrong, or when that's so generic that it looks the same as like 4 or 5 different potential fibres. You cannot possibly connect the different things together to such a degree. Like when they say things like, "Oh yeah, we got fur from your fur jacket, and we know that it's definitely your jacket because it's exactly the same muskrat hair." They went, oh, how can you tell it's the same coat? I can't tell it's the same coat. I can tell it's the same muskrat. Like, it was the same animal. The muskrat that was made into that coat. No, this is a perfect match. No, you can't do that. Unless you've got the follicle and you've DNA tested it, there's no way to do that. The only thing that is close to 100% is DNA, and even then that's not 100% because obviously things like twins exist. But yeah, most CSI evidence is significantly less reliable than people make it out to be on like CSI shows. A lot of it is circumstantial, and you have to have an overwhelming abundance of evidence. If you've got fingerprints and shoe prints and blood staining, and you've got an injury that matches a broken window, and things like that, and the time all fits together, and all the evidence adds up, that the chances that everything is wrong would be infinitesimally small. That's when you can claim you have enough evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, because there is doubt in every piece of evidence. So, excuse me. The next is the trace evidence in these shows is magic. Right. Trace evidence does exist, but these shows take it so much further. Like, Bones is so extreme with the trace evidence stuff, especially in the later seasons. And I've noticed they've started doing this. Like, every single murder leaves marks on the bone. Every single one. You could slice a throat and not cut into a bone, not touch a bone. You don't have to cut deep enough. Like, you could slice there, and you're not going to touch the bone. You could gut someone and not touch the bone. You could cut someone under the arm and they'll bleed out, not touch the bone. You could sever the femoral artery and not touch the bone. Like, there are loads and loads of ways you could kill someone without touching the bone. Like, every single stab wound into the chest always nicks a rib. Always nicks a rib. They never stab between the ribs. Every single time they nick a rib. Not only do they nick a rib, they always leave trace evidence. Now, I don't know about you, but my knives aren't made out of powder. My kitchen knives is not made out of chalk. If I stab something, it does not leave behind loads and loads of bits of metal, otherwise the knife would not exist after a year. The amount of times I chop things with a kitchen knife, the knife would have faded away to nothing if I left behind traces of steel every time I cut something. It's even funnier when the knife used to stab a victim in these shows not only leaves traces of the steel of the knife in the bone of the wound, but it also leaves traces of the environment around it. So if the knife was left around in a garage, it'll have traces of the petrochemicals, like the gasoline that was on the floor in that room. So they'll be able to find and isolate that specific petrochemical and the model of the knife, and sometimes they'll even find like an insect egg, like inside the scrape on the bone that the knife left behind, as if the knife picked up an insect egg and then left it behind. That just does not happen. Like, it doesn't happen. This is ridiculous. On top of this, we're talking about a set of bones that you've boiled in order to remove all the flesh, because the flesh never has important trace evidence in it. The flesh, they just remove that immediately because we need to look at the bones. A tiny scrape on the bone, all the evidence will be in that tiny scrape. It's so silly. So, trace evidence is ridiculous. And they take it too far. Now, you can find trace evidence. You can find fibres. You can find traces of pollen and things like that by swabbing things. You can. But it's not magic. Like, you can't get a bone that you've boiled, removed all the flesh off, and then find a scrape on the bone left by a dagger, and then take a swab and swab the scrape to find stuff that the dagger deposited. It doesn't work like that. It just doesn't. This is magic. This is magic. And it's how they solve every case from about season 7 onwards. So it's starting to get tedious for me at this point. The next point, I think, is even worse though, because honestly, like the trace evidence thing and the forensic practice, like the times when I've watched CSI and they're like they don't have gloves on, their tie is like traipsed over the evidence, and it's like, oh god, you'd get fired. You'd get fired on the spot for that kind of thing. But that aside, the one thing they do, which I think is completely unforgivable, because the average layperson is going to notice this, is in forensic shows, they think we've never used a computer before. Now, there's that famous NCIS clip where, someone's there typing away and like, we're being hacked, and they're just mad pressing buttons on the keyboard, and then someone leans over the shoulder and starts typing away on the same keyboard. As if that would do anything. If two people type on the same keyboard at the same time, you get gibberish. We know this. We own computers. The other thing, like the whole enhanced photograph thing. They'll get a blurry photograph and they go, oh, can you enhance that? And all of a sudden, it's blown up to 8K. And you can see the pores in his face from a slightly different angle. It's like, that's not how photographs work. We know it's not how photographs work. But the most annoying thing for me is the beeping. It doesn't matter what program they use. For a start, every program is unrecognisable. No one's using Windows. I don't know why no one's using Windows. We've used computers. We know the difference between Windows, the Apple OS, and Linux. We can recognise all three, and Android now as well. We can recognise all major operating systems at a glance. We've been using computers for years. So why do they make these fake, stupid looking, like filled with weird graphics and stupid buttons and things like that, OSs that no one in their right mind would pick? Like, they've always got stupid, over-the-top systems that you've got to do just to open a file. But the thing that annoys me the most is the beeping. Like, they'll grab something and they'll move it from one area to another and go... If your computer did that, the first thing you do, as soon as you bought it, is go... Options. Switch off the fucking beeping. Like, you'd never leave it doing that. Why would you ever want a computer to do that? Oh, God. It's as if they genuinely think we don't know how computers work. It's the only thing I can assume. So, yeah, that's one of my big pet peeves. As you can gather, I've been watching a few episodes of Bones recently, and this was just on my mind. So I thought I'd share it with you guys. I've got some other videos coming, but until then, this has been fun. I'll see you guys later. Bye.